Hey there, I'm Ian Douglas. I'm the author of the website techinterview.guide, and I'm here to help people with career advancement and interview preparation. My live stream on Twitch covers topics such as company research, how to build resumes and cover letters, applying for the job, getting through interviews, and what to do during negotiations. I've coached thousands and thousands of people over the years to get jobs at the biggest tech companies in the industry, and I'm here to help you too. The following episode is taken from a longer live stream event and may contain interactions with other people in chat. Check out the end of the episode for more information. Let's get to it. So let's dive in. In this case, they had some links to LinkedIn and GitHub, and they also mark very clearly that they have government clearance. So let me start with some preamble before we get into the resume review. When I do resume reviews, these are my opinions, and opinions are like armpits. Everybody's got a couple, and some of them stink. You don't have to take my advice. You don't have to listen to my advice, and you certainly don't have to, implement the advice that I give. But I've been in the tech industry for 26 years. I know what makes a good resume. I've been a hiring manager. I've been an engineering manager. I've been a director of engineering. And so I know what goes into a good resume. So these are just my thoughts and opinions. The first thought and opinion on a resume here, is the resume needs to be a concise list of facts of the value that you bring to a company. It doesn't need to be every single thing you've ever done ever. It needs to be really clear and to the point so that I can find out in a hurry, do you match or meet the qualifications that I'm looking for a particular job post that I've posted. And so that's basically what I'm going to be working through here. Is I'm going to be looking through the resume and just figuring out at a glance, does this make a good software developer resume? And go from there. Alrighty, Bet's good to see you in chat. Thanks for lurking as well. Cool, so let's dive in a little bit here. So the first thing that this person is presenting is a list of their skills. Now for a bit of backstory, when you submit the resume, I do ask a little bit about, what are you looking for in the review? And this particular person really wants a job. I believe this one was Amazon, but let me double check. The goal is to get an L4 position at Amazon. That's kind of an intermediate level developer. Would this resume catch your attention? What issues do you see with it? So we're going to dive in on that, and then we'll go into the second resume from here. So this person's trying to get a job at Amazon. Amazon cares a lot about the technologies that you have. They also care a lot about, have you been a user of Amazon services? In this case, they've done some AWS. They are also very keen about how are you building things for users and what they call their leadership principles. So let's dive in. So the first thing that they're showing me is skills. This entire block is bold. I would probably unbold this and only throw bold on a couple of things. I would probably add bold on just the main technologies that you think are going to stand out the most to them, or just put these sub headings in bold and leave the rest of it not bold. In this case, the way that I read these lists, most people will read a list left to right on a resume in what we call strength order. So in this case, they're telling me I'm a JavaScript developer who knows Swift, and I also know a little bit of Python, but their primary language is JavaScript. What's interesting about this is they end the list on the first line here after Python with a comma, which tells me they've edited this resume perhaps for this company, but they've left off some skills that they happen to know. What's interesting, though, is this list here is separated with slashes. These are all individual, unique technologies. I would probably remove the comma or remove the slash and just comma delimit all of these. Some people will also say HTML and CSS are technically languages, and that could be up on the top line with other languages, which is fine. Either way, I think is okay. For backend, they do Node.js and Express, MySQL, MongoDB, or Data and Jest. And then for tooling, Git, GitHub, Bash, VS Code. So Bash and VS Code, companies don't care. Companies don't care what shell you use. Companies don't care what editor you use. That kind of stuff can be left off. Docker and AWS is fine to have on here. Now, the fact that they're using things like the command line tool and ECS and so on, and EC2, these are fine. I would probably capitalize EC2 and ECS, though, because those are like actual Amazon technologies. I would also probably put a space before the parentheses here with jQuery and AWS, just to kind of even those things out a little bit. I think the automatic keyword detectors in a lot of applicant tracking systems will have an easier time finding those. But Bash and VS Code, I would take those off. So from there, they're showing me projects and then the education that they did. In this case, they went to Hack Reactor, which is part of Galvanize. And then they're showing other coursework that they've done. Now, this coursework could have been part of their bachelor's degree, in which case I would probably not put this in a whole other heading by itself. I probably would just put it under education. But let's go back up to projects here first before we go too far. Me personally, I'm not a fan of the vertical bar as a separator. Just tell me like the name of the project, comma, and like, was it a group or solo project? And then show me a GitHub link. Or ideally, if it's something that you could put online somewhere, like a Netlify or a Heroku or something like that, like get it online. Let me experience what you've built. Put that online somewhere. Let me give me a link that I can click on to actually go see what you built. That lets me know that not only can you write code, you can write working code because it's in production. It also shows me that you're able to actually put this online somewhere, maybe in a Docker container, maybe it's hosted on AWS. Like put that link on your resume as well, because that just reinforces that you know things like Docker or AWS. So get that online somewhere if you can. Project description, I probably wouldn't put on this line. Typically, the way that I would build out a project would be the name of the project, comma, was it a solo or group project, comma, and then a link to GitHub, and then a link to like a production URL of some kind. Putting the date on here is helpful to know that this was a recent project and it wasn't a project that you did like a decade ago. I would probably keep all your dates over here on the right margin though, including like when you went to school and when you worked at other jobs and things like that. Try to be consistent with where you put those dates so it's really easy to see. In this case, it's right over here on the left margin for all of your projects, and your font size also changed. But here, you're putting it after whether you were like on campus at the school or you did Hack Reactor online. Same thing with these. And then for your jobs, you're putting it in between the name of the company and the city. So it makes it really hard to find the dates to build a timeline of when you did the thing. So I would put all these dates over here on the right margin because this whole right margin is really empty. So get all those dates over on the side. From there, within your project, the first thing that I would put here instead of the date, like I would move the date up to the first line over on the right margin. This next line then, give me a user statement. Tell me why the user would use this application. Who did you build this for? The reason that this is important is it shows that you have empathy for users, and this is something that Amazon cares deeply about. They want to know that the people they hire are doing things with the user in mind, and that they are all about building things the best way possible to give a user a pleasant experience. So having a user statement, not like, I built this Node.js, app with Nginx caching so that users could do something. No, it needs to start with user can register and blah, blah, blah. So what do I see about this project? Initial capacity of 100 RPS. What's RPS? What's the context of RPS? And then optimized to handle 1,000 RPS. It's probably a request per second. A 400% increase in RPS with Nginx caching SQL query optimizations. Your average recruiter is not technology minded. They're not going to know what RPS means. So yeah, it's good that this has quantified information, but in some cases you do need to explain things or not use acronyms. Excuse me. You need to not use acronyms in this case. So I would actually spell out like initial capacity of 100 requests per second, and in parentheses you can say RPS, comma, optimized to 1,000 RPS, comma, 400% increase. So again, bullet points don't need to be grammatically correct sentences, and they don't need to be really, really big sentences. But you don't really tell me what this project is for, aside from you did some Nginx caching. Like, what even is this project? Like, why is a user going to care about what you've built here? You've given me nothing at all about it other than you use Loader.io and Artillery for load testing, but what is the project? Like, if it's about, just, hey, I built a proof of concept so that I could dig into Nginx and SQL query optimizations and whatever, say that. But right now, like project description, because you've anonymized what the project description is, I would put that project description on the next line and give me 10 to 15 words about what that project is. Why did you build this for the user? What does the user do with this? And then give me bullet points about like, what did you learn? What was your tech stack, and so on. So the second one here, again, project description kind of got anonymized and lost. Again, I'd put the date over here on the right edge. Architected the React front-end service of a photo carousel and modal pop-up backed with RESTful API backend. So what I would probably do here is that user statement would be developer users can implement my library to easily build a React-based photo carousel. So you're showing me what the user can do. You're telling me how easy it is for them to do it by like plugging in your library, and now they can go do a thing. So again, you need to start with a user empathy statement here, talking about what it is you built, why they want to use it, how easy it is to use, because that's the kind of thing that Amazon's going to care about here. And then you can tell me you built this, as a RESTful API, wrote business required click tracking logic in React to allow tracking of user interactions across the application, Dockerized the app, created a bash deployment script to easily launch instances and improve deployment speed. Okay. I mean, these are all good things to really stand out to Amazon. I would probably not make the sentences like fully grammatically correct. I would shorten them a little bit because that last sentence is almost going edge to edge. I typically say a bullet point should maybe go 2/3 of the way, at most 3/4 of the way across whatever container you're putting that bullet point in. Don't go edge to edge because people aren't going to be reading all those words anyway. So I'd probably shorten that one to like created Docker and deployment scripts for launching on like AWS EC2 instances to improve deployment speed by 30% or something. Like quantify how much you sped that up by doing this. And then as an iOS project, using core data framework for data persistence, using combined framework to display images for stability and asynchronous calls over new async gateway. But again, you're not telling me like what this project is. So user can blah. That's the user empathy statement that you got to give on these things. That's going to stand out to Amazon, not just the technologies that you've used, but the fact that you've built it for a particular kind of user, for ease of use, or fast loading of blah, so that user has a great experience. Those are the kinds of things that you're going to need to stand out there. All right, so going into the education, Hack Reactor Coding Bootcamp is fine. For coursework, all of this happened as part of your bachelor's, like just given the timeline here. You don't mention any coursework for what you learned at Hack Reactor. So I'd probably move these things as bullet points as part of your bachelor's degree, and then maybe give me at least one bullet point of like, what did you learn at Hack Reactor? Was it a front-end program? Was it a full-stack program? Like, tell me a little bit of something so I don't have to go look it up. You could also say like online coding boot camps. So you get rid of this online word. And again, I would put the date over here on the right edge. As far as your coursework goes, University of Anon and then Anonymous Community College. Okay. That's all fine. Experience-wise, Office 360 support analyst. Again, I wouldn't bury the date in between the company and the city. I would get that over on the right edge. And then you could probably say like what your role is, comma, company, comma, city, or you could do company, comma, title, comma, city, or company, city, title. And then which one of those things do you want to bold? I wouldn't bold all of this. Are you trying to emphasize the company where you worked, or are you trying to emphasize the role title? Because the date and the city aren't going to matter to Amazon. So those things don't need to be bold. But you probably don't want to bold your title and the company. I would bold one or the other. If the company is like a big name company, bold the company name, but then do that consistently. You're going to have to do that for both of these companies. If the title is more important, the fact like if you're doing like analyst work for Amazon, then you would, or if that's the kind of role that you're applying to at Amazon, then I would put a bold on the title instead. And then for involvements, fraternities, that's going to matter to some companies, but probably not most. Most companies aren't going to care that you were in a fraternity. The fact that you were treasurer, Okay, you can handle money and you can handle it responsibly, hopefully. If that's important to a particular company where you're applying for a job, then great. If they're doing something with financials, great. If you're going to apply for a role on Amazon teams that are dealing with billing, great. But if you're going to go work on like EC2, I would leave this off the resume. I think there's far better things you could put on a resume than unrelated things. Certifications, I would keep all of these things on here, especially the government clearance. So these are fine. But a lot of these things look pretty crammed together in some cases and not others. Like your skills, they're all on one new line each. Your projects have a blank line separating them here. Your education has a blank line separating them, but your coursework does not. Your work experience has a blank line separating them. Your involvement does not, and your certifications do not. Those are the kinds of consistency things, like what we would look for as an eye for detail. So I would reformat these things a little bit differently. Again, I would probably put all of this on a single line, put the date over on the right edge, and I think that it'll shrink these down a little bit, but it's going to clear that up a little bit. So when I tell people about building out a resume, the number one advice I give is make a big resume with all of the content and then trim it back down to one page as you apply for a particular role at a company. By trimming it down to one page, it's forcing you to think about what you don't want to keep on the page and what's important to that company based on the role, based on the company, what's important to them. For someone like Amazon, they care about leadership principles and the fact that you were a treasurer in that fraternity. It's kind of a leadership-ish sort of role, so maybe it's okay to keep that. But for your average company, if they're not dealing with financial stuff at all, I don't know that you would need to keep this. Now, depending on what you did as treasurer, if you were like keeping books and you had to keep track of data and keep that private, then that's a privacy, like a data privacy kind of thing. And I would mention that as part of this role. Tell me, explain why you're putting this on the resume. Like, give me a little bit of background or context about like why you felt it was important for me to see that you were a treasurer of a fraternity. Because again, when I'm looking at this resume, I'm trying to find out in a hurry, how are you bringing value to my company? So those would be kind of my generalized thoughts about this particular resume from here. Thanks for checking that out. I hope that you found it helpful. I always appreciate feedback, so please let me know what you think. I appreciate any subscriptions, so please tell your friends and colleagues about it as well. Check out the website techinterview.guide for more information about when I'm live streaming and all of my free content. Drop by a live stream anytime to ask questions or message me privately, whatever makes you most comfortable. See you next time.